Hello and welcome to episode 181 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is April 10th, 2023. Today I'm wearing a scarf that's the project is called, my Ravelry project is called My Own Brioche Scarf. And the reason for that name is that the first time I knit this pattern, I knit a scarf for my son, who is very, very happy about it. He still loves wearing it. Whenever it's cold outside, he'll wear it. His is, of course, black. And I decided to do the same pattern for myself. It's a very simple scarf. It's just 50 stitches. It has a 3-stitch I-cord on either side to make the edge nice. And then it's a simple brioche stitch. This is the yarn, and that's sort of trying to peek out, but that's okay. And I use the merino yarn by Hansa Farm. It's a pure DK weight merino yarn, and it's one of their signature colors. It's the color Deep Ocean, which on the screen looks quite blue, but in real life there's a bit more green in it. So it's a mix between blue and green. And if you look at it closely in the sunlight, you can see the different blue specks and green specks. And it's one of my favorite colors. I just love it. And I've knit the alpaca version of that color before. And it's also part of my crochet square. And this is the merino version of that color. And I think I just knit up 5 50-gram balls, and the scarf has a nice length, and it's a very simple pattern but very effective, very nice, very wearable. And then I'm of course wearing my new Dreamcatcher pullover. Is the German name of my project. The pattern is called Hopi. It's out of this book by Linka Neumann. I explain everything about the pullover in last week's video. If you haven't seen that, you can check things out there. And today I just wanted to show you what the pullover looks like on me. So it's just, a bit too long to properly show on screen, but I think you could see the lower edge. The sleeves are the perfect length, which is quite a surprise. I tend to make them too short, and then every now and then they're too long because I'm afraid to make them too short. But this one looks really perfect. I really like the way the yoke comes down, so it's not too tight under the arm. I added short rows, so the pullover sits higher in my neck than it does here. It could have been a bit lower in the front, but it's okay, it's not too bad. And the pattern is nice, the colors are quite crazy. And I think the pullover is everything that I expected, except for one thing. I did think it was going to be widely oversized. I thought it was going to be a really wide pullover that sort of just hangs every which way. And it isn't. It's quite a perfect size. And it shouldn't be surprising as I knit the smaller size in the book. But especially when I started the yoke, it looked so huge. But I think that's because of having all the stitches for front and back and both sleeves on the needle. It just seems to be so big, and it wasn't really. So I'm really happy. The yarn is all opal sock yarn. This colorful one and this colorful yarn are 8-ply yarns. The solid color red is a 4-ply yarn that I held double to get the same thickness as the other 2 yarns, and I think they work together really well. So that's what I'm wearing today. On to finished objects. I have one finished object that I finished last week, plus I changed something about one of last week's finished objects, and that's the crochet motif that I did out of the Elements of Life crochet along. And I told you that I would like to make a cushion cover, and I sort of still want to do that, but I thought it's going to take a long time to crochet a second piece that I can then attach to the first piece. and it would be a shame to just have it lying around and nobody seeing it. So I crocheted this piece onto a sort of metal ring or hoop kind of thing. And I went to the shop thinking, well, let's see if they have a size that's about right, because the ones that I have here are all too small. And I measured the crocheted piece, and then I went to the shop, and this was the biggest size that they had, and it's almost perfect. It's a little bit too small, so this is quite floppy, as you can see, but it's okay. It's even if it's not perfect, I think it looks really nice, and I'm going to hang it in my shop on the wall, and then people can have a look at it until I finished the second piece. And then I can undo this row of crochet, and I can use the yarn that I used for crocheting it onto the metal thing to crochet it to the other piece, and then I can have a beautiful cushion. And then I can crochet another piece that I can put in here. And maybe I won't do 2 cushions, or maybe I will do the same with the next one and then just have it in here until I've finished the second piece. And then maybe I'll find something else to crochet into this hoop. Yeah, but I really like it. I really think it's really pretty. I think it's interesting how you can see just a little bit of the pattern from the back side. In the beginning, I thought all you could see were the rows of crochet, but the pattern just shows a little bit. Very fascinating. I'm really fond of this technique now. Okay, so that was last week's finished object that I just changed a bit or finished a little more or whatever. But the project that I not only finished last week, I also started it last week, is of course the Sock Madness socks. And I told you last week that we were waiting for the pattern, and I had hoped that the pattern would come while I was still in the shop, so I could choose from all the opal yarn that I have in here. But the pattern dropped an hour after I got home. And then I read through the pattern and I realized that all the beads that I had picked out, plus the ones that I had bought, just to be on the safe side, they were all too big. So I had to go back to my stash and get out some smaller beads. And I also looked for some yarn from my personal stash. And this is what I knit. So the beads that I used, or the thing that made, the reason the other beads were too big is you have to put 3 beads on every stitch that gets beads. So even though you do make a longer stitch by wrapping the yarn around twice, if the beads are too big, you just can't fit 3 on one stitch. The colorful yarn that I used is by Lana Grossa, and I bought it years ago. And this solid color yarn is Regia sock yarn. That's really old. I can't even remember where I got it from. And the socks are called Socks of Little Brain by Anne Rutgrink. And the inspiration behind the socks is Winnie the Pooh. So the main color should have been some sort of yellow, and this color should have been a red. And then this is looks like Winnie the Pooh with his red shirt, and these are supposed to be bees. So you were supposed to use golden beads, but I don't have golden beads. And then this sort of looks like the honeycomb, because Winnie the Pooh loves honey. And there's a little honeycomb thingy up here. And this is sort of the shirt collar, which is open in the front. And then the socks are mirror images. So you have the same pattern on this side and on that side, and then the honeycomb pattern runs into the toe on this side, but it doesn't on this side. And then another really funny fact. So this is not very colorful, it just has a very subtle color change, which is why I chose the yarn, because I wanted the pattern to show off nicely. But because it's one of my favorite colors, I wanted to keep the socks. And because they are knit top down, it's really easy to change them afterwards. So, and then I realized that all the beads are done up here in this part. So what I did is I first knit one of those cuffs, and the blue shirt. Then I knit the other cuff and then the blue shirt. Then I knit this foot and then I knit this foot. And I was so surprised when I realized that it's almost perfect match in the way the color stripes. It's so funny. You know that I never like doing exactly the same socks. So I think this stripe is just a little smaller than this one, but it's basically the same. It's so weird. The only thing that's really different are the colors up here. So this is a lighter section and this is a bit darker. It's not a big difference, but still. I was so surprised when I realized that was happening. Really weird. If I'd gone for it, I probably wouldn't have been able to get it better. And the other surprising thing is they almost fit me. They're just one size too big, which is not enough for me to undo the toe and re-knit it. I will just leave them the way they are. They're just a tiny bit big, so I may put them on top of other socks or on top of tights. Then it's perfectly okay. And I'm really happy. So this is the second pair in this year's Sock Madness that the minimum requirement fits me, or almost fits me. Really, really nice. Yeah, so this is Sock Madness round 3 socks. I knit them as quickly as I could. So half of last week I only knit on these socks, and I managed to get a place on my team for round 4. My team is already full and we are that team again, which means we were the first team to have all the spots filled, and I only just made it into the list. So next round probably will be the end for me, but we will see about that. So the round 3 started last Monday, so it runs until next Monday. So this week I won't have to knit any competition socks, and I can concentrate on my other things, which is very good because there are quite a few projects that I did not get to knit on because I spent so much time just knitting that pair of socks. Yeah, so, and this is the only finished object for today, but it's not the only new cast on. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the knee-high socks are one of the projects that I did not knit on, but I added a little bit to the Meandersocks, which is a Sock Madness bonus pattern. So we got that last round or the round before, I don't remember. And I'm using this opal country colorway, and this is the second sock, and I put it on a sock blocker so you could see the 2 patterns together. So they look almost the same, but they are mirror images, but you have to look really closely to see the difference. Yeah, but I think it's fun to have a different chart to knit from, and yeah, just a matter of time that I didn't put more knitting into that. The same goes for the next sock. These are the neon pink lace pattern socks from my beautiful new book that I introduced to you, I think 2 episodes back. And last week I had already finished the heel and part of the first pattern repeat, and I just added a few rounds, not a lot, but enough to be able to show it to you. And hopefully this week I will get to the toe of the first sock so I can decide what to do with the pattern in the toe. Really looking forward to doing that. But it takes time. Okay, I did not knit on the dinosaur skeleton loop because I didn't have the time to check the pattern to see which direction the dinosaur has to look. But I started 2 new patterns, and that's the 2 patterns that I already talked about, I think, last week. One of them is because I have a new book. I don't know who of you is familiar with Nathan Taylor, who's called Fragmentation on Ravelry. He's a knitwear designer, very, very talented knitwear designer who used to do almost exclusively double knitting. I think he started off with socks, but then he went into double knitting, and then everything he did was double knit. And then he started knitting brioche, and I think he was unhappy with the fact that if you do 2-color brioche with a pattern, you have a front and a back side, and they look differently. And because double knitting is reversible, he wanted the 2-color brioche to be reversible as well. So he started experimenting, and he came up with a new way of knitting 2-color brioche that he calls double knitted brioche. And he found out how to do patterns that are reversible and look the same on both sides, which is really interesting. And I think there are some patterns that don't look the same, but they're still kind of reversible. It's difficult. If you really want to understand what's going on, you have to get the book, which you can't at the moment, because at the moment it's still exclusive to the people who bought the book like 3 years ago in the crowdfunding thing that happened. And I was one of the people who paid the money and said, I want to have the book. And so I got the book last week, and I've been reading. I think I told you last week that I already started reading, but last week I finally cast my first project on. And of course I changed things. So I wanted to knit the mitts. Mitts About You is what the pattern is called. It's knit with the DK weight yarn, and I wanted to knit it with the fingering weight yarn. So I tried to guess how many stitches I'm going to need. I did the same cast on that I did for the dinosaur skeleton scarf, which is knit double knit. So there's lots of similarities between double knitting and double knit brioche. And one of the things that you can sort of do the same is the cast on. There is a way to do the cast on in the round. I did not follow that for this piece because it just seemed a bit too difficult. So I did the normal cast on. I knit 1 row and then I started knitting in the round. But either I misjudged the gauge. Yeah, I must have misjudged the gauge. So either I should use fewer stitches or a smaller needle, because for mittens this is just too big. I don't want them that big. I want them a bit more close fitting. So I put this to the side. I may continue knitting this and either make it into leg warmers, but with this thin yarn, I'm not sure I want to do that. Or maybe I can knit mitts that sort of go up my arm, and then I can work in some decreases towards the wrist. I don't know. I just didn't want to undo it yet. I wanted to show you. And then I started the same project again with the DK weight yarn. So the yarn that I just showed you is the Alpaka sock yarn by Hansa Farm. And this is their Alpaka yarn. It's a DK weight yarn, and it's a machine washable alpaca yarn, which is extremely soft, wonderful to work with. You have to use a wool wash and a very gentle setting on your machine, but then you can actually machine wash this yarn. And this is my second attempt knitting this project, and this time I actually did the invisible cast on in the round for double knitted brioche. And this is it's as with the squares from the dinosaur skeleton. It's a very invisible cast on. The stitches just seem to appear out of nowhere. And it is a bit fiddly. It's not that easy to do, but the explanation, especially the videos that go with the book, are fantastic. And I'm pretty sure, maybe you have to try it once or twice, but I'm pretty sure if you're comfortable with knitting, you can do that. So I cast on the stitches, and I used a slightly bigger needle than he recommends because I'm a very tight knitter. But I still felt that this is coming out a little bit too big. So I changed to a smaller needle. Of course, I changed mid-project. I'm not going to undo this. I'm so happy with the cast on. And if the end is a little wider than the rest, I don't mind. So I'm just going to continue with a smaller needle now. And the mitts that's a very simple pattern. So even though I would love to start trying out the patterns or the different stitches, I thought it's maybe not a bad idea to start with something simple. So these mitts are simply knit. You knit a long cuff, then you knit back and forth, and then you reverse the colors. So I think what we're going to do then is have the dark gray as the knit stitch and the light gray as the purl stitch. And then we do that for the same length that we did this pattern in the going back and forth. And then we're going to knit in the round again. So there's going to be a hole for the thumb. And then one half of the mitt has this color and the other half of the mitt will have the other color. And then the plan is to knit both ends of the mitt so long that you can either have it long and you have like the fingers inside the mitt and have your arm, or you can fold it up and you can fold it down and then you can use your fingers and it maybe won't be on top of your pullover or inside your pullover, something like that. So very simple pattern. I am planning to add a thumb later on, which in itself is not very complicated, but if I want to keep the mitt reversible, it will take a little bit of fiddling around, but I do have an idea of how to do that. We'll see when I get there. So this is my first project from the Soccermatician's new book, Double Knit Brioche. The book's going to be available for everybody in 5 days. I think April 15th was the date that you put that anybody can buy the book. I have no idea what it's going to cost. Now, I don't remember what I paid 3 years ago, but I think it's a fantastic book. I love the projects that are in the book, and I love the fact that I can use all the techniques in the book for all the other two-color brioche projects and patterns that I already have. Okay, so that's very exciting. And the other new cast on that I cast on, I think I mentioned last week, is that I signed up for a test knit. And I should have started already, but instead of starting the test knit, I had to knit Sock Madness socks. But I have now started the scarf that I'm test knitting. I think the project doesn't have a proper name yet. So I can't remember the name that she's given it so far, but it doesn't matter. As soon as she's settled on a name, I can link to her project page or her pattern page, then you'll find out about it. And I chose this yarn that a friend gave to me. It's a sock yarn by Lang Yarns. It's a beautiful rainbowy colorway. And the pattern asks us to knit these hexagons. And they are then going to be sewn together and sewn together to make a scarf. But she doesn't ask us to knit a full scarf. If we don't want to, we can just knit a few of those motifs and then sew them together so we can check the pattern if we understand everything, if everything works out. And I suggested to maybe do fewer pieces and then sew them together into a loop scarf, and she said that was okay. So right now I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, but this is the second motif that I knit, because the first one that I knit I already blocked, and this is what it looks like blocked, and it's such a difference. And it's not difficult, it's a fairly simple pattern, but it's really beautiful. I hadn't expected the stripes on the edge to be this small, even though I knew that the color change was happening fairly fast. But I love the way the colors sort of show in the middle of the motif. So this is the first one that I knit, and this is the second one. So you can already see that the colors come out completely differently. And I think the yarn that she used had a color repeat that was a lot longer. So a lot of her motifs look almost knit as if they were just one single color. And the reason that she's knitting those pieces one by one and she's not knitting them onto each other is that if you have a skein of yarn and you like the colors in the yarn, but maybe you don't like the way they come together, or you don't want to keep them in that order, if you knit these single motifs, you can then rearrange them any way you like. And that's why she has you sew them together later, so you can decide how you want the colors to meet or not meet, and you can decide on your own color layout. So at first I thought I was going to just use the one ball of yarn and just do a little loop scarf. But now I found another ball of yarn that I bought on a holiday, I think last year or maybe 2 years ago. And it has very similar colors except for the green. And so I'm still debating whether just to make this a one skein project or maybe use the other ball of yarn as well and then make either a scarf or a longer loop scarf. I don't know. I really wanted to make socks with the other yarn. So I'm not sure yet. Maybe I'll just knit one motif from the other yarn just to see how they go together. Anyway, this is the scarf by, is it Yuki Knits? I think. But yeah, as I said, I'll link my project to the pattern page as soon as the pattern is published, and then you can find out all about it. I just love the way unblocked and blocked pieces look so different. Yep. Okay, so these are all the new cast-ons from last week. Then let's get on with some more projects that you already know. And I continued knitting on the Noro jacket that I am knitting out of the Noro Silk Garden Solo. So I've almost used up this ball. Once this is gone, I have 2 more 50-gram balls of yarn. I'm pretty sure that should be enough to finish the yoke, but we'll see. And yeah, I put this on the hanger, so because now it really looks like a cardigan. I love it, and I'm really happy with how the decreases come out. So I've added, I think I've done something like 5 or 6 decreases now, and this is what it looks like. So this is the one knit stitch that I sort of have in the middle of the decreases, and then there's one purl stitch next to the knit stitch that just runs up, and then the other purl stitch next to it, that's the one that I knit together with the other stitches from the front and back and the sleeves, and I'm quite happy with what it looks like. So I was a bit worried the purl stitches might be too prominent, but because they tend to sort of hide a little lower than the knit stitches, and there's always some knit stitches coming again, yeah, I'm really happy with what this looks like. On the front, I've also done decreases to get a sort of V-neck, but the rate of decreases is slower than the raglan, so it looks a little different. But still, I'm quite happy with how that looks. And now I have to keep knitting. I think I had calculated I was going to do 20 decreases to get the height that I need. So that's what I'm working towards. And then I will see if I have enough stitches for the collar or too many stitches or not enough stitches, and whether the height is okay or not. It stays exciting. So that's the Noro jacket. Then I did not continue knitting on the cashmere pullover. Really sad about that, but again, this is a 2-color project. I have to look at the pattern. I will make sure to make that a priority this week. But I knit on both the shawls that I am working on. This is the Pierre shawl by Stephen West, knit out of hand-dyed yarn, DK weight yarn by Wolldackel. And last week I showed you the stripes, and I've added quite a few of those seat stitch rows. I don't think I've done them all yet. 4, 6, 8, 9. I think I have to do 3 more rows of those, and then I will have to look at the pattern how to do the transition to the last pattern. But once I've done those rows, I will have finished with the light color, and then the border will all be knit in this darker color, which still has light colors in it, so which is quite funny. So even though I'm striping the 2 colors, I sometimes get these spots where there's only white, pink, and this light green and no dark blue, which is quite funny. So I'm really looking forward to just using the dark color just to see how the colors come out there. So that's that. And then the Fragmentation shawl, the other shawl I'm knitting by Stephen West. I'm using opal sock yarn out of their beauty series. And I had started the 4th segment and I've just added onto this 4th segment. And so this is like the middle top bit of the scarf. This is what it's going to look like. I'm now right in the middle of the shawl and yeah, still very happy with what the colors look like and how the stripes come out. Now I'm knitting the part where the rows keep getting longer, so it takes a little longer to finish each stripe, but that's okay. It's sort of mindless knitting with just a little bit of attention to not forget the increases, and I still enjoy knitting that a lot. Yes, and that takes us to the crochet granny square alpaca lace Hansa Farm project. I finished crocheting the dark grey round that I had just started last week. I've done a whole round in the light grey colour on top, and I did a full round of the dark blue grey. Not quite sure where I stopped last week, but anyway, I've finished those 2 rounds. I've started with the dark grey, the charcoal grey that I'm repeating every 3rd round now, and I've found the picture that I took with the with how I want to use the colors for the next. It was 15 rounds, and it's now, this is 5. So for the next 10 rounds. So after I finish this charcoal grey, I will put another row of this middle grey, then I will put a row of black, and then I'm back to the charcoal, and then I'll mix the blue greys and the light greys again. So that's the plan, if I'm not going to change it. So that was everything that I knit and crocheted last week. I'm really happy it was more than just Sock Madness socks, and I'm sorry the week has gone by. So even if I didn't do a lot on some of the projects, at least I kept them going a little bit. And I will make sure to remember the projects that I didn't show today. And yeah, so the next round of the Sock Madness can start Monday night at the earliest. So between now and the next video, there should be no new Sock Madness sock. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!